Anybody have any questions?
I do.
Yeah.
Self-publishing versus publishing.
Yeah,
Tell us about that.
I'm actually, we're in two different places, actually. He's a lot further along on this than I am.
Well, I wouldn't use the word further. So I think it's, take 3 steps forward, take 8 steps back. But nowadays, it all depends. I mean, I can tell you kind of my history. When I first wrote, the first 2 times I wrote Silver, basically just sat in a computer file. The third time I wrote it, I actually went through what's called a vanity publisher, which is, it's not the same as self-publisher. These are organizations that are set up that will format your book. They won't, unless you pay them extra, they will not do things like editing, but they will design a cover. Not the best cover in the world, but they will design a cover. And they tend to use a technology called print on demand, which is actually pretty good because it used to be if you wanted to self-publish a book, you had to print thousands of copies and you could pay $20,000 to do it. Print on demand basically is you print out as many copies. So if you want to order just 5 copies of your book, you order just 5 copies and just pay for those 5 copies. So it's a little bit more friendly to people who just want to see their name on the spot. The problem with self-publishing is, for one, it's not, with the vanity presses, is for one, some of them are not reputable. If anybody's ever heard of a thing called Publish America?
I've heard of them, yeah. Actually called them once and got bad vibes, so I didn't.
Yeah, there's actually a story, and I can't remember, there's a story about an author by the name of Travis T. And he wrote a book, and I cannot remember the title. It was like Tampa Nights or something. It was in Florida town.
Yeah.
But basically, the whole story is that Publish America always said that it put itself out as a regular publisher, and then a group of science fiction novelists got together, and they wanted to challenge the idea that Publish America has any quality control of their book. So they each wrote a chapter of what they hoped would be the most god-awful book they would ever be put out, and they submitted it to Publish America under the pseudonym Travis T. Travis T. And apparently it just, the writing is absolutely awful. The character changes ethnicities throughout the book. Several chapters are missing. One chapter was written entirely through a random word generator, and they submitted it, and it got published. And you can actually buy it now, because I think Publish America cut it off as soon as they realized they even had. But I think there is a small, because people now know what the joke is. And people like to get it because they say it's just the most funniest thing to read.
I'm still looking that up.
I can't remember, it's like something Nights, Atlanta Nights or
Travis
something?
T.
Travis T, yeah. But anyway, I got kind of off the point there. But that is kind of what you got to expect with these, is that, for one, bookstores aren't going to give the book the time of day because, again, there is no quality control. And they tend to be a bit pricey because you've got, on top of the printing costs, you've got the costs that are going through the publisher.
And don't forget, they don't do, a lot of them don't take returns.
Yes.
So
and that's a deal breaker. Well, there are a lot of deal breakers with bookstores, but that's like the biggest one.
Because Barnes Noble, they can get your book, but they'd rather not have it, because if it doesn't sell, then they're stuck with these copies they can't send back to iUniverse.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people don't know, is that when a book doesn't sell, it doesn't just sit in a warehouse. They send it back to the publisher. They usually rip the cover off. And they sell it back. They send it back to the publisher and get basically a refund for it. These places will not take returns. After that, I got a couple books through a small press called Lightning Storm, and it was worked like a regular publisher. There was an editor. There was a revision process. It was not a vanity press. I didn't pay at all. I didn't pay one dime to the company at all. But at some point, I think they began to overextend themselves, and eventually I had to pull myself out. Since then, I've actually done kind of self-publishing directly through just a printer, which I did with these 2 books, which is, it's not a vanity press because they're not a publisher, they're just a printer. I formatted the book myself, did the editing myself, designed the covers and everything myself, and they just put it together. But they're a print-on-demand publisher.
Yeah.
But I think the difference basically is what you want to get out of it. I mean, again, if you don't mind the idea of just having something, a book that you can show your friends, you don't mind having a book that has your name on it, it's good. I mean, and especially with something like they've got now with print on demand, it can actually be very cost effective. It's nowhere near the life-saving, I mean, I think I probably paid at the most $100 to put out one of these, at the most.
This is for Vanity Press.
Well, no, this was through Lightning Source. Lightning Source is not a vanity press, it is a printer. They don't advertise your book, they simply say, I mean, you could send them 400 pages of the letter R, and they will print it if you pay them, because that's what they do. They don't get involved in that.
Traditional publishers use Lightning Source.
Yeah. But you just got to be ready for the fact that, you know, if you take your book to a bookstore, most often than not, they'll very politely but very firmly say no thanks, but no thanks, because for one, they don't know you. You know, they
They'll
don't
just see POD and assume that it's self-published, so they won't
Yeah.
stop
And
it.
plus,
Yeah.
let me.
Yeah, that's true.
I worked at Barnes & Noble for a few years, and they're not crazy about local authors coming in and wanting to know how it's displayed. Always worry about, you know, it's like, oh God, it's that guy who put this book in.
Yeah.
I mean, after a while, I recognized a couple of authors who come in, and yeah, you just got to be a little more savvy about that.
Yeah.
And
I learned a lot about, I mean, at the time that I especially when I was with Lightning Storm, I learned a lot about the kind of way bookstores work. But for example, when you see a bookshelf and you see a book sitting like this, or you notice a book sitting like this, it's not just simply done that way to make space. Publishers actually pay extra to have their books on a shelf like this. And there have been times where authors apparently gone into bookstores, taking their books and done this, which is the easiest way to get you blacklisted,
yeah,
you know, by a bookstore.
they don't they don't like you being like.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's true, I can testify to that. When I worked there, I would get like listings, like, okay, put these and then face that one out. It's all thought out when you walk into a bookstore.
Did you say $100?
I don't quote me, because, I mean, I'm just showing, it was not I didn't sink life savings into it. It roughly around there. There's like a $50 setup fee, and then they charge per page. I cannot require, but I know it was not expensive, again, when you compare it to what I've seen and heard people who've gone through like other self-publishing where they've had to buy, you know, units of like 5,000 or 10,000 copies, and it's costing like $25,000. It's, you know, I did this simply because this book, after I left Lightning Storm, went out of print, and I wanted to keep it in print, and because I wanted to be able to still go to events like these. And I had this kind of waiting in the wings. It was actually in the queue at the time that I left, and I just kind of thought, well, just might as well get it out there. So I'm working on a book now, and I'd much rather try to go back to getting that published right through and finding an agent once I get it done. But, you know, I got to get to that one first.